Hello, today we're here with Prentice talking about the working life of our mother, Mrs. Violet White, and sharing the memories of ALLDERS with us. Would you like to introduce yourself, Jay?
Hello, I'm Jay, and my mother, as you say, was Violet White, who started working for ALLDERS in 1956. In fact, I was 8 years old at the time, but I do have vivid memories of where Mum used to work and what used to go on. And today I actually live in Eastbourne with my husband Gary, so we've come a long way today to be here and to contribute.
Oh, pleased to meet you. Thank you so much.
That's okay. And in fact, Mum and my dad, they finished their retirement years in Seaford in East Sussex, which is why we actually went to Eastbourne, but obviously they're no longer with us now.
So would you like to tell us a little bit about your mother?
Looking back now, it's quite a surprise to me when I realised that when Mum started working at ALLDERS, she was still only in her 30s, with 3 youngish children to care for. I was the youngest. And obviously my dad, her husband, working full-time, and Mum was working full-time. And it was not until my older years and I look back and realise what a heavy responsibility it was and what a senior post she took on at a relatively young age. Because when Mum started at ALLDERS all those years ago, really any senior personnel would be men. So Mum was very unusual to be a married lady with children in a senior management role, because she was head of the hire purchase office at the time. In that same year, we had moved to Addington, near Croydon, from London. We used to live in Vauxhall. And Mum and Dad were able to buy their own house in Addington through a mortgage through Croydon Council, which again is unusual in this day and age. To help finance that, Mum knew that she would have to work full-time, and her previous job had been bookkeeping in Boots the chemist. So I think that background gave her the qualifications to apply for a job in the hire purchase office at ALLDERS, which at the time was the flagship store for the South East, where anybody in the South East would go to purchase clothes, furniture, if they weren't actually going to London. So it was a very big store and a big department. And I think, again, Mum probably did very well to obtain the job and to keep it for as long as she did. When she first started, I think even Mum was a bit overwhelmed by the size of the store and everything that they had out on display and the members of staff that they used to have. But of course, she was there every day and got very used to it. And because she was working in hire purchase, she actually worked with every department of the store and got to know the personnel really quite well. And my opinion is that Mum got on incredibly well with senior members of staff. She was a very knowledgeable lady and had a lot of credibility about her. She was always extremely polite, and she knew how to conduct herself with others at all levels, at all times. And she was a very businesslike lady who I think accorded a lot of respect in the store from all levels of staff. It was very formal working. Nobody was called by their Christian name. And in fact, throughout Mum's working life, she was Mrs. White. And that continued throughout. She had a few close colleagues who would perhaps call her by her Christian name when they weren't working, when they were at social events. But at work, it was always by her surname, Mrs. White.
So what did the company mean to her as time went on?
I think it was very much her anchor, and also very much it became a way of life in terms of being able to afford really the best in the way of furnishings and clothes for her family, because she got a tremendous staff discount. She got a discount because she was a manager of 20%, which is a huge amount of money, and it allowed Mum to perhaps purchase things that wouldn't have been normal for her. And also she was in that environment where everything was very new and very lovely in all the departments, and she had a big choice of looking at things. Yes.
Did she work in any other areas?
No, always in finance, always in hire purchase, which became credit control over the years. And one of the main jobs, everyday jobs, was at the end of the working day, is that all the figures of the income would balance. And originally, of course, that was all done manually every day. And Mum had to be responsible for thousands and thousands of pounds on a daily basis, yes.
So what were your experience, was your experience of your mother working at Alders? Have you got any stories she told you, any anecdotes that you can recall growing up?
Not really, to be honest. I haven't got any particular stories, but I used to go into the office quite regularly because I was still a schoolgirl, and used to come in and was very aware that Mum was the boss in the office. It was all ladies in the office. And she was obviously quite strict in her working practice, not only for herself, but expected it of others. And it was always a very calm atmosphere in the office, and the work was being done in a very good manner. Mum had high standards, and she expected everybody else to accord to them.
That's from 1957?
Yes, this was first published in 1957.
She started there in 1956?
Yes, and it's a welcome to Alders.
Would you just like to open that up? So
Yes, it's got various pictures of the Alders frontage.
The flag on there.
Yes, and then as you delve into it, it's got an introduction and all the board of directors, all men, of course. There's not a female name.
Did that change?
It did, yes. And in fact, the store detective, which was obviously a very senior job, the store detective was a woman for many years when Mum was there. And obviously, you would imagine that was a very senior job. So the handbook starts with working hours, and we open to the public at 9 a.m. The staff must be in their department by 8:55, and it carries on, but it's described by a little cartoon, which is a very busy bee in his hive, and that's the working hours. I found this little booklet quite fascinating. Then there's a little section called In and Out. You can only enter the store through the staff entrance, etc. And pay and promotion, your personal property, sickness, first aid. It really does cover really everything, and I think it's quite priceless in its own right, really. And I was glad to find it amongst Mum's little mementos from her time there. Yes, it is, isn't it? Yes.
So your mother Mrs. Violet White was at Alders for 26 years.
Yes.
Did she relate to you about how she felt that it was changing over the time, obviously how it evolved? Did she?
One of the biggest things really was the change in female employees, because there really weren't very many, and the female employees would be in the office and not customer facing, or they would be in departments like hosiery or lingerie, or ladies' clothing, anything else, furniture, hardware, carpets. It would all be men staffing the departments. So that has been a huge change over the years, and indeed in the time that Mum was there. When she left in 1982, which is when she was 60, there'd been a huge change in the employment there.
You were explaining that you went into the department store as a young girl. What was your perspective of your mother there, and how did you see your mother?
Yes. My perspective of the store was that it was huge, absolutely huge. It took a long time to walk through each department, and my memory of Mum's office was it was quite a little bit tucked away, but there was a little window, I suppose, where customers could go if they did have any inquiries. But I always felt when I went to see my mum that although I was there and I was her little girl, she would never really be like she was at home with me. She would always be very professional there, and I would acknowledge that and realise that, and I wouldn't expect her to be as motherly with me there, because I knew that she had a business role to play, and I was brought up with that. I was well aware of that.
So did she confide in you about her relationship with management and other colleagues?
Sometimes with other colleagues, because she overall really, she was responsible for quite a lot of all the lady employees in her office, and as with any people, they had their ups and downs and personal problems, and Mum did help to counsel them and try and look after them. And there were a few problems that I don't feel free to actually share, but Mum would sometimes talk about them and sort of tell me how she tried to help and resolve those problems. And the other thing that she had to do with customers is that sometimes, because when Mum started, hire purchase was relatively new. I mean, the country wasn't that long out of the Second World War, really, and people were still trying to get back on their feet and establish themselves. So hire purchase was a new concept of being able to have something in your house that you hadn't wholly paid for, but you would pay for monthly over the next 1-2 years, or maybe even longer. And some people obviously would run into trouble in trying to pay that money back. And if that occurred, very often Mum would be accompanied by a male member of staff to visit the people's homes, the customers' homes, and try and talk to them and resolve their financial situation. If that wasn't possible, their goods, and it was mostly furniture, carpeting, white goods, would have to be returned to the store. And that was always very difficult, and obviously Mum didn't like being involved in that, but that was the regulations and it had to be done.
How did your mother, Violet, feel that she was treated at the company?
Yes, she was treated very well and very respectfully, but never at the same level as a man. And in fact, this came to pass when she was due to retire. Her pension wasn't as much as a man would have been in the same position, and I've got correspondence where she appealed about that to the board of directors, and I think in the end, looking at Mum's record of service, they did look favourably at that. But even in 1982, the way men were treated as opposed to women still wasn't equal, nothing like it is today. And Mum, quite rightly, she did fight for her rights in a very pleasant, business-like way.
What about the atmosphere there? I mean, with her male colleagues, did she get on well with them?
Yes, she did.
Generally the atmosphere in Alders?
Good. Yes, it was a good working environment, and there were staff benefits, a staff dining room, and there would be staff outings and a staff dinner and dance, or Christmas parties for the staff's children. All sorts of very nice things were organised by the store.
All right.
Yes, yes.
Did you attend some of these events?
The children's parties, they were very, very nice, yes, and we had Father Christmas there giving out Christmas presents, and it was just a very nice, I think when I say innocent sort of party that is very difficult these days, because we were able to sit on Father Christmas's lap and things like that, which I know now is not quite so straightforward, and it was just good innocent fun.
Yes.
And Mum and Dad used to go to some of the dinner dances, because obviously they could take partners, and in fact at one, which was at Tiffany's at Purley, Mum was presented with her gold watch for having worked there for 20 years. Yes, so that...
It's lovely. Your mother, did she have limited interaction with customers? She was in the office. I remember you said that she would go out with a male colleague.
When she went to customers' homes, she was always accompanied by a male colleague. But sometimes she would talk to customers on the shop floor or indeed at the office, and perhaps advise them on what their payments would be, etc., and the situation that they would be getting themselves into, and what the future would look like in terms of the payments.
So you said about Violet that when she left, I was going to ask you why she left and when she left, but you said she'd retired?
Yes,
So
she worked until she was 60 in July 82, and that's when she retired. That was her retirement age.
So if it hadn't have been a retirement age, do you think she would have gone on?
Yes, I do. Yes, she was more than capable.
She was very
Yes,
active.
yes. In fact, when she retired, she learnt to swim.
Wow.
Yes.
It's never too late.
No, never too late. And I've got her swimming certificate. And so Mum retired at 60. Mum and Dad were the same age, so Dad had to go on to 65. So for 4 years, she continued to live in our house at Addington.
Yeah.
So she came into Croydon often and kept up with her colleagues who were still working. But then just before Dad was 65, that's when they moved to Seaford in East Sussex. And then things obviously go differently after that when you move out of the area. But some of the people from Alders actually moved that way as well, so she was still in touch with a few people.
So earlier
You were mentioning your dad. Was he supportive of your mum being in such a high position?
Yes.
Or was that kind of competition?
No, never competition. My dad was very, very supportive. He had a great deal of respect for Mum, because he always said that Mum had the brains and she had the head for figures that Dad didn't have. So Mum, when I say she ran the household administratively, and Dad was the very strong pair of hands who was able to do all the DIY. So it was a good partnership, and both of them respected each other for their strengths. One of Mum's very good friends, who was a colleague, was a lovely lady called Doris. She was always really known as Doris Massey, Miss Massey, her maiden name, but she was married. She was Doris Fuller, Mrs. Fuller, and in fact her husband Bert used to work in Alders carpet department. But I did see about a week ago that Doris actually passed away about a week ago, and I have a feeling she would have been about 90, something like that. Yes.
Do you think your mother would have envisaged that Alders would close after, so soon after?
No. It was a big surprise to her. I think she thought, because when Mum joined in 56, it was up and coming. Croydon was up and coming. It was a really good, thriving town. The store was thriving. As I say, people would come from all over the southeast to Alders for their shopping. If they didn't go to London, it would be Alders of Croydon. As I say, when Mum started at Alders, it was up and coming, thriving, flagship departmental store. And in fact, other big companies, employees from other big companies used to get a discount there. For instance, I know somebody who used to work for Imperial Tobacco, and that company, their staff used to get discount at ALLDERS. I don't know why. I can only think that there was maybe a link up on the board of directors with some crossovers, and so people got different benefits maybe. So it was very busy. Croydon was obviously emerging as a very big outer London town as well. And when Mum left in '82, everything was really good and successful. So it's such a shame that things went the way that they did, because it was a beautiful store. Yes.
Do you think there's any way it could have been prevented?
I think that's too big a question for me. I suspect Mum would be able to answer it fully, but I don't think I can, I'm afraid. No, not really. Mum would have known much more about the inner workings. Well, I knew Croydon very well because we lived, as I say, in Addington, not far away, and I used to go to school in Croydon, so I wasn't far away from Mum. I used to go to Croydon High, which is now at Selsdon, and Croydon High used to be on the Wellesley Road, which was opposite the Whitgift School, which was the boys' school. So we had beautiful playing fields in the middle of Croydon for both schools, and Croydon was a very elegant town and a nice place to come to. A little bit different from what it is now. Very different.
So what would you like to happen to the ALLDERS building? What would you like to see develop into for the future?
Well, I would just like to see it become a very nice shopping centre again with elegance that's missing now, I'm afraid, and really looked after and governed in a proper manner to attract, you know, the customers and to get life back in ALLDERS and in the town again. I've just walked through St George's Walk. I couldn't believe what I was seeing when I was here, and I am going back 40 years because I used to work in Leon House for Brookbond Oxo. St George's Walk was creme de la creme in terms of the place to go for maybe a spot of lunch or something, or some nice shops. And it's dismal now. It's such a shame.
He was telling us about certain celebrities that
Yes.
he encountered. Do you ever recall your mother talking about anyone sort of famous that she had any interactions with?
She mentioned, you're probably all too young to know Michael Holliday, who was a singer, and he used to live in Shirley. And Michael Holliday, who was a bit of a heartthrob, I have to say, at the time. He used to go in, and Mum dealt with him and his family. And she also dealt with Ian Wright, the footballer, who's now well into retirement as well. They're two names I particularly remember. And I think she dealt with Ted Rogers, the comedian, as well.
All of those.
Yes, yes.
321.
That's it, 321, Dusty Bin, yes. Any more than that, I can't really remember, but I'm sure she did, because she used to do, the stars, anybody really of any sort of fame used to go there. This is Mum, Violet White, who I've been talking about, and this is a lovely photograph taken of Mum on what would have been her 85th birthday. And she always dressed nicely, she always looked very nice, and she wouldn't tell you, but she always received a lot of compliments for the way that she looked, and she was always very nicely turned out, and I think this is one of my favourite photos of her in her later days. Mum passed away just before her 95th birthday. I think what I learnt to love about Mum in so many ways, I mean, we all love our mums, but she had very high standards, and she did everything to maintain those and achieve them. And she was very particular, cross the T's and dot the I's, and my husband says I'm just like that. And And I must admit, you know, again at home, I'm the one who does the paperwork and the finance. I seem to have taken on that role from my mum in our own lives. But yes, she, in my eyes, she was just wonderful. And I have got a huge amount of respect for her, even more now when I look back on her working life in particular and what she achieved at that time, which, you know, these days doesn't seem so remarkable, but then of course it was quite different. What we grew up with, we didn't know any different. She really worked from when all of us were small, and we all knew how to look after ourselves, cook a meal, and my brothers did housework and everything because that's what we had to do. I think I might have mentioned in my application form, I think there were two questions. One was, what did you like about working at ALLDERS? And I think my reply to that was the sociability, because there were a lot of people and Mum would know everybody in all the departments. I thought maybe the one thing she disliked was that because it was a departmental store open 6 days a week at the time. So on one working week, Mum would work Monday to Friday, and she would be home obviously Saturday and Sunday. But then the following week, she would work Monday to Thursday, have Friday at home, but then be working on the Saturday. And I distinctly remember those weekends because I would be at home with my dad, and we would sort of occupy ourselves, but really we'd just be waiting all day till 6 o'clock on the Saturday when Mum would be home for the evening. It would never seem quite the same at home without Mum being there. But Mum quite liked her Fridays when she was home and none of us were home. Dad was working, we were all at school, so she actually got things done at home. So although it wasn't nice to be in on the Saturday, it sort of balanced itself, I think, in Mum's eyes.
I believe you have some other paperwork. Is it headed?
It's headed letters that Mum received.
Would you like to share that with us?
Yes, I've got them here. The first one is just a little memorandum on a typewriter, of course, and this is January 1974. And it's from a Mr. R.N. Stevens, and it's very short. I'll just read it to you. There's to my mum, Mrs. V. White. I would just like to take this opportunity of thanking you for the wonderful figures which we achieved because of the hamper promotion. I know that you worked very hard, and I do appreciate the excellent support you have given the company in this respect. Now, I would imagine that the hamper promotion was if customers took out a hire purchase agreement, then they had a hamper of food, one would assume, but that's the little memo. And then this is a little letter from one of the directors, Mr. Peter Saunders, and Mrs. V. White, customer accounts, ALLDERS of Croydon, 28th of August 1979. Dear Mrs. White, it is with tremendous pride that I officially advise you of your entitlement to a company gold watch commemorating 20 years of loyal and industrious employment with the ALLDERS Department Stores Division. You have undertaken your responsibilities with total dedication and are a great credit to a great company. I would esteem it a privilege if you could be present at the firm's annual dinner dance at Tiffany's of Purley on December the 11th, when it would give me immense pleasure to officially present this commemoration to a remarkable achievement in the presence of your business colleagues. Yours sincerely, Peter Saunders. Now, interestingly enough, Mum had been there 23 years, and this was her 20-year gold watch. And again, I think it's something that she had to request because the gold watch wasn't presented to a lady. So it's interesting, isn't it? That's because on the 31st of October, the same year, 1979, this is from Mr. Slaymaker, another director. Dear Mrs. White, I understand that this is the 23rd year which you have spent in this company's employ, and I would like to take the opportunity of thanking you for your loyalty and enthusiasm during this time. A service record such as this is an achievement of which you must justifiably be proud. So please accept my congratulations, together with my best wishes for the continuance of our long and happy association. Yours sincerely, Peter Slaymaker. The 2 letters there. And then there was another memorandum in 1979 again. Seemed to have a lot of them. And this again was from Peter Saunders. And there's the memo there. Shall I just read this one? A short note of appreciation for all you and your magnificent team have achieved over the past 2 weeks pre-VAT spending spree. One always tends to take you all for granted, which perhaps is the greatest compliment management can pay. However, I know the hard work and effort that has gone into providing your normal high standard of service over this very busy period, and would thank you especially for your staff's efforts in making Saturday's record results possible. As you know, we have arranged with Mr. Kench for a little something to be given to the girls. Once again, my sincerest thanks, Peter Saunders. That was June 79. Mr. Saunders' mum knew very well and got on extremely well with him, and I'm almost sure that Mr. Saunders had a son who mum was very interested in, and he became a football player, I believe, for Brighton. And they used to have a lot of chats about that, because of course mum had 2 boys, probably much the same age at the time. But yes, I honestly don't think she ever had any difficulty talking to the directors, to the board, to the senior management at any stage, because she was well versed in her work. She knew everything that she needed to and more, really, but she was very modest with it as well. In fact, in some ways, I think she was a bit before her time. I think at school, mum was really, in London, she was really university material, but she met my dad on the bus to school, and they married. They were very young, they married and they had children, so university was out of the question. But I think she was probably university material, had a very good brain.
Well, Prentice, it's been marvellous sharing all your memories of your mother's time at ALLDERS.
Thank you.
We've really enjoyed it. We've learnt a lot of information. We love seeing your documentation.
Thank you.
And I'm sure she will be very proud that you've shared that with us today, and she knows our thoughts.
Absolutely.
And it's been a pleasure
Yes.
to meet you, and we wish you well for the future.
Well, thank you very much indeed for all those kind words, and I know that Mum would love to be here herself, and I'm sure that she's with us. Thank you.